Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, hey, hey. How's it going?
Hey, it's good. How are you doing this morning? Good.
Oh, much better than last time.
It's morning in New Zealand and dinner evening here in the east coast of the United States.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, Michaela says she's getting a little bit tipsy staring at my intro. Oh, but the music is wonderful. Don't look, but listen. That's actually a may I say, Rekkr is on acoustic guitar doing Fly Me from the Moon, and named Christopher Mate added some bass. And I believe he did the production, right?
Yeah,
He
he did.
added all
He
that.
did all the production and stuff.
Yep. Mm. It's just one of my favorite pieces right now, so I've been using it a lot. Yeah. Thanks, Michaela. Like I do enjoy it. I like to promote these artists when they do something really creative like that. It tickles me. So, well, today, I don't know if we're going to be tickling everybody,
Hmm.
unless we're going to be like feather tickling some brains, maybe, you know,
Yep.
yeah. A little bit more
Hopefully we can.
serious. Yeah, hopefully. And a little bit more serious conversation. Uh, well, this was your idea. So do you want to start like what this book is and why you want to bring it out here to the socials?
I could give it a shot. Well,
it,
um, so I had heard about the 48 Laws, and I had spoken to Claire about it a while ago, like maybe
Mhm.
a
Yes,
year or
because
two
another
ago.
friend was actually doing it on Rumble. Darth Hideous
Mm.
was doing all 48 laws at the time. And if you're not familiar, the 48th Law was a book written by Robert Greene. And it is, a way to get what you want in life by not being a victim, so to speak. Would you say? Yeah.
Yes, and something that sort of attracted me to it even more was the fact that Claire had said it had been banned in some prisons. Is that
Hmm.
right?
It was because really it became very popular for the illegal cult of the world, the mafia, gangs, and people that want to do things the wrong way, like get around the law mostly. Using it for manipulation tactics and learning how to convince people to do anything, how to talk your way out of stuff like that. Yeah. And so since they knew that they were studying it, and a good example is some of these series that were out there, The Wire. Actually, the lead character in The Wire that was running the gang enterprise that actually went to business using it, used the 48 laws, always a step ahead, manipulation, trust no one, blah, 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 underlining things. It can be used for bad instead of just good. It was meant to be an empowerment tool, and I'd say it does empower. But the prisons got rid of it because they were empowering them in the wrong way, so to speak, to organize against the system inside the prison. So, like, you
Yes.
know what I mean? So they kind of
Mm-hmm.
banned it in a lot of them for that. Because I think you'll agree, there's a lot of good information in there, in especially in
Absolutely.
especially in just recognizing the techniques when they're being used against you, which is how I approach the book. Not to manipulate other people or do whatever, but definitely to understand when it's being done to me and to protect myself from it,
Mm,
and to not be a victim. You know. Well, this isn't the
exactly.
48th law, is it? No, this one
No,
is it. Mm-mm.
but it's not the 48th law. I I happened to find another book that was written by 50 Cent called The 50th Law. And
Mm-hmm.
that sort of caught my eye because, well, I mean, 50 Cent, he's an excellent artist in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it fascinating that someone in his position um, would decide to actually write a book and want to expand on the 48 laws.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to not only like dive into this book, but to share what me and Claire find in it
Mm-hmm.
and how
It's
our
like,
perspectives are around it, and
yep.
hopefully like use it for improving ourselves, I guess.
Yes, no matter how you look at it, absolutely. And Liam, you're right. Like we said, only in some US prisons it's still available to the public. We're not saying it's a bad book at all. It was just like the conversation that Rekkr and I had that got us interested in it was that angle that it was banned in the prisons, and so we started to find out why. And so we looked at that. And this book was written by 50 Cent and the author of the 48th Law, Robert Greene. They
Mm-hmm.
met in, just to give you a little background, they met in 2006, and Robert Greene was fascinated by 50 Cent because here's 50 Cent telling him he's an admirer of the 48th Law. He loves the book, talking to him about his past, talking to him about his life and his struggles. And here, Robert Greene says he's looking at a person who embodies what he's trying to tell people, that he embodies the whole thing, but in a slightly different way, in that he wanted to use it as an example. And they talked about collaborating, but they didn't know exactly what they wanted to write about. And it actually just turned out a to be 50 Cent as an example of some of the things in the 50th law that Robert Greene is trying to address, which is mostly conquering fear, explaining how we got here, conquering everyone's slight fear of existence in general. And I don't mean that we're timid, and I don't mean that we all have our heads in the sand, but just the common thread that today's today's lifestyle, today's societal pressures, today's media presence, political concerns have worldwide made this a much more fearful environment, even though it's not. Like
Exactly.
compared to our ancestors, with with what it is. But for those of you that don't know who 50 Cent is, Rekkr, do you want to give a background on him, or do you want me to? I think it's
Um,
important they know who he is before we go further.
well, okay. So 50 Cent, as we know him right now, is a well. He was the creator of vitamin water,
Mm-hmm.
which he went on to sell it for. I think it was like 2 or 3 billion, 1 billion. Was it some? It was some crazy amount. But he actually got his start basically in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be. I don't know. I don't think he was a gangbanger, but I know he
Well,
used
he was
to sell
drugs.
drugs and hang around rough people and stuff like that. But later on in his life, he had been signed to a label, which because he had started to rap, and he was actually a very decent rapper.
Mm-hmm.
He sounded completely different to what we understand him in his modern music now.
And that
Um,
label just happened to be Eminem and Dre's first
actually,
venture.
not yet.
Yeah. Oh no, not
Um,
yet. But it
no,
did happen like after
it
he was
it did
arrested, right?
it
Like
did have
after
it did
he
happen.
got.
Basically, from what I can remember, his first label didn't know or weren't fully aware of the beef that he had in the streets until he
Oh,
was
that's
shot 9 times
and
in an
survived.
assassination style attack,
Mm-hmm.
um, and survived. However, he did get shot. One of the bullets did enter his face, and I believe it like smashed into his jaw.
Yeah, it changed to the way he speaks. It
And
changed everything. Yeah.
so now, after that, he wasn't able to rap like he used to. Because, well, I mean, you've had a bullet in the jaw and you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to be able to talk very well, which is why he now has that sort of slower, um, slower speech
Mm-hmm.
it's much smoother. Um,
I don't think it really held him back because he got a
it
new
it didn't
record.
hold him back because
Yeah.
he used it. He changed his rapping style completely
Mm-hmm.
and started going crazy on mixtapes with this new kind of slower, more smooth cadence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's around the time after he'd done all this huge mixtape like push, whereas basically I think he was like giving out mixtapes or selling what he could, giving them out. And then
Mm-hmm.
Eminem and Dr. Dre found him. I think Eminem was the one that found him and brought him to Dr. Dre. And that's when we started to hear more about him around like 2003, 2004.
Right, and
That's
that
when
would
we
be.
heard in the club.
Mm-hmm.
If people remember the music video of him coming down from the ceiling doing some hanging sit ups.
Yeah, and this is a couple. This is when Robert Greene would have become familiar with him before he met, because
Mm,
like 50 Cent's real name is Curtis Jackson, which is like, and he really didn't have a great up like childhood or whatever thing. He's from Southside Jamaica, Queens, a very rough area, tough environment. Okay, it's got poverty, violence, drug dealing, gangs, you name it. It's not a good environment back then. He lost his mother at a young age. He's been raised by his grandparents, but they don't call it gang, but they said he got involved with the street life. Okay. His raw hustle, he just became the foundation of his mindset. He was dealing drugs. He got arrested very young at 19, which started him to think that there was a time limit on, like, the hustle was productive as far as getting him ahead with money, getting him what he needed, surviving to get out of this, but that he would have a short lifestyle, so to speak. It's got a very short lifespan. So
mm,
that's when he started thinking more projective and he started putting himself in music, right? And then he got
yep.
his that first record deal, and then he got shot 9 times because not only was he starting to do the music and thinking he's got to build business, and he didn't approach music just as a creative outlet. He approached it like a business. Like
Mm.
like Robert Greene goes on in the introduction of this before the first chapter to explain that he analyzed the music business and everything before so that he could get used to things. He took his survival instincts and his street knowledge and then tried to apply it like how do I recognize these people in the music business? And he said he made a statement in his meeting to Robert Greene that I think is pretty much lays out the whole foundation for the book. Pretty much he said they weren't that different. It's like you take the street life and what I had to do there, and you apply it to what I had to do to get ahead in business in the music industry. It is pretty much the same. And basically, that's how the book started. They started talking about conquering the fear of living and accepting challenges and seeing things for what it is and just dealing with things for exactly how they are. Would you agree? I mean, that like just moved forward.
Yes,
I mean, yes, he got a great
exactly.
got a great music career out of it after that first record deal dropped him because he was still
Mm.
in the violent life and that he was a risk. Like people were afraid. Basically, they dropped him because they thought if he showed up to a music studio to record something that there could be a big shootout and other people like they were it was a risk that they didn't want to take, that they didn't want to get sued by people for putting them in danger for having him around because he was obviously challenged in his street life. People didn't like his success, so he did get out of it though and started to move
He
only
did.
into music, but not just music. Like you said, he started vitamin water in all of
Hmm.
these entrepreneurships, and he applied the same thing. He diversified, but also he didn't just like some people in the beginning would think, oh, is that selling out? I mean, I did when I first listened. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not being a true artist. You're just like using that fame to make money in other ventures until he became a producer for Power. Like people forget about that. The whole series Power, which is based on a drug ring rising to power using these tools, the 48th law, the 50th law, conquering fear, getting what you want. He did
Hmm.
that. He was a producer for that show. Like he was instrumental in getting that show out there. A very successful show, gritty, raw, but would you admit real?
Oh yeah, it
Mm.
is. It is. From the bits and pieces that I've seen, I do want to watch the whole thing at some point because there's some
Mhm.
really great acting in it.
It,
Um.
yeah, to me, it's akin to the one that came before it, which is anybody who's more my generation than Ricker's generation. It would be The Wire. When we saw that, the cops versus the drug industry and gangs in the area, and all the interconnection in double dealing, manipulation, all the planning ahead. The head guy in The Wire that actually ended up beating the system and accomplishing everything used the 48 laws. It was pretty apparent because he was always ahead of everybody else in the planning and the organizing. Trusted nobody, you know didn't tell anybody what was going on. you know Basically played both sides. Always listened to both sides. He knew what was going on in both sides of everything all the time. um, Very, same thing in Power. The lead guy, right? He knows both sides, what's going all the time. He doesn't
Yep.
stick in his little echo chamber. He doesn't stick with just his people. He wants to know what's going on all around him, everywhere. Well, the reason we have the slides up, by the way, is so that we can be prompted to keep going about forward. But basically, that's the foundation of the introduction of the book. And I do have the PDF list link above for everybody that wants to follow along or read this ahead. I
Hmm.
do believe Rekkr and I decided to do just the introduction in chapter 1 today.
Yes.
We're not going to read you the chapter. We're going to talk about what's in the chapter and the key points using slides to kind of prompt us along the way. And I hope you guys are all okay with that. But please, if you have questions, ask them. Just at one of us so we can see it. Okay? Because we don't want to lose anybody along along the way. But there are a lot of great quotes in the book too, and I have picked them out. And the first one is from Malcolm X, and he'll be talked about a lot during chapter one. But his first quote coming into chapter one is, "So over you is the greatest enemy a man can have, and that is fear. I know some of you are afraid to listen to the truth. You have been raised on fear and lies, but I am going to preach to you the truth until you are free of that fear." And that was Malcolm X, um, preaching against to the black community to say it's no longer to be silent just to get along. You've been through a lot, but basically his message was, now's the time to speak up and get what we deserve. Basically, would you say that's what kind of? And I know that sounds weird coming from an old white lady, but having grown up in that era when all this was happening, that basically was his message: not to stay silent, not to just get along and keep
Yeah,
quiet.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So one of the first attitudes, basically what Robert Greene does with 50 Cents in the chapters, is talk about the premise of how we got here. And basically, fear was used, or basically the whole book is just going to be in the beginning about fear. Fear was used in the beginning to keep us alive. Our
Hmm.
ancestors used fear in a flight or fight response to for survival. It was a matter of,
Exactly.
fighting an enemy or running from an enemy. Eat this or don't eat this. The weather could kill you, the environment, the creatures, the animals, the other people around you. But that was way back then. you know Now you
Now
would think,
we're pretty cozy considering.
yeah, and you would think that our fear responses would be less. But
Mm.
studies have shown, and Robert Greene talks about in the chapter, that that's not true. Actually, we are dealing in a more anxiety ridden uh, pressure cooker than ever. Most of us feel anxiety on a different level than ever before. Idyllic, idyllic childhoods where we used to just run around and play and not worry about things are gone. You know,
Yep.
even if you're not paying attention to the news every day, or you're not politically entrenched in everything that's going on, just the anxiety and the peer pressure of, what is the person next door doing? Do they like me? Do I measure up? Am I doing the wrong thing? The media pressure, advertising mostly, and the media pressure on how things should be and whether you measure up is astronomical. No matter how
Es-
old you are, what sex you are, or what country you live in, we're all dealing with it now constantly.
Especially with the way that the media likes to get their clicks and views, which is
Hmm.
using very, very leading titles which have very open-ended answers,
Hmm. Yeah,
that
folk.
are designed to basically get you going, oh no,
Hmm.
oh no, what is this? What's happening?
Exactly. Things like climate, the end of the world, climate change. Oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. This has never been seen before. Like this, like actually just pumping everything up to the extreme, and
The
then
worst one I think I've ever seen was this common household food you're eating is may be giving you cancer, and it's
an
like,
avocado.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I
and
get it.
and you go into it and it's something absolute that, and it's an entire article with zero scientific evidence for anything, and
Well,
that's
exactly.
and that's what seems to be happening more and more often is that, like, we're getting hit with all these clicks and views type stuff.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Thank you for everybody who's joining in chat. Like I said, if you have questions, just go ahead, or comments, go ahead and add them in. We want this to be interactive, but it
Avocado is
definitely,
evil when
avocado
it
is
goes
evil.
bad.
I love avocados. So I get upset about this kind of stuff because I do think there is a tendency to promote things dangerously with misinformation, or like a little kernel of information, blow it up to make it appear like it's something other than what it is. And we're all facing this every day now, which is actually making our fear response and actually kind of keeping us from moving forward in the things that we want to accomplish. It is instilling
Absolutely.
fear and doubt, and we're constantly questioning ourselves, and
And the worst form of it is when someone um, sprinkles in these absolute fallacies amongst actual fact.
yeah, right. So that it becomes even more difficult to weed through it. These days, it's very common for people not to double check the stuff that they're reading anymore. Like
Mm,
to get comfortable with just reading it and moving on and not realizing it's building up on us. Whether you realize or not, it's building up on you, building up on you, building up on you. And so you don't know what's fact or fiction anymore. Uh, and that's unfortunate. But
hmm.
it creates this fearful attitude that Robert Greene talks about, and he's talking about how we got here. But I think we can all recognize that this fearful attitude actually does exist. And he
Absolutely.
gives one of the things he does in the chapter is give examples of a period in time, historical figures that have dealt with it, a fearful attitude in this case, or a society or a population of people that are actually feeling this. And for an example for his overcoming the fearful attitude in general, he used Franklin D. Roosevelt, an American president here in America, an American president of the United States, rather, who was president right with the Depression, which was a horrible time. The people were fearful about the future, about day to day living, about being able to progress the country forward. Uh, there was fear of everything, and no one was really. It was hard to actually talk about positivity at the time. And Franklin uh, Delano Roosevelt was actually dealing with personal issues at the time too. During his pregnancy, in his 30s, this man contracted polio as a young man, 33 years old, with a political career. And he was compromised after the paralysis from the waist down and put in a wheelchair. And he had to navigate actually keeping that political figure, being president of the United States, sitting in a wheelchair. A lot of people don't know because he was such a stalwart figure of confidence and ability that people forget that he did it all with a blanket on his legs in a wheelchair, in what most people would say would be a position that, if you just took a quick glance, would be weakness, right?
Hmm.
But not FDR. He actually moved our nation forward, trying to embody people. Anybody anybody remember the famous quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt? It does have to do with fear, but I think I'm going to have to help them
Yeah,
out.
he isn't he the one that said the only thing to fear is fear itself?
Exactly, because he was like, I understand you have fear. Who wouldn't? Well, what we have to do is conquer it, because what's worse than the fear itself, not doing anything about fear itself, is the problem. And so Robert Greene uses him as an example of tackling that attitude and recognizing first that you have the fear, that fear exists, right? And we have it, and then
Hmm.
just, trying to find a way to put it where it belongs, to
Exactly.
recognize it for what it is, and then like kind of like moving forward, you know?
And that sort of how do I put it? It's sort of a situation where you kind of have to accept what's happening when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to fear, especially like during times of like really bad fear.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to just accept what's happening and
Mm-hmm.
often that'll let you overcome it, or at
Absolutely.
least make the fear more uh, observable.
Right, because it's a fact. No one is born fearless. You know, we always admire people like Franklin D. Roosevelt and all of these people that we look at that seem to have all this confidence and all, and they're fearless and they just go for it. No one's born that way. Fear is in us as a defense against the world. We're born to have fear of things. It protects us. It was survival forever, right? So it's
Hmm.
natural to fear. It's natural and normal to have fear. No one's saying like if you feel fear that like that's like there's something wrong with you. No, that's the normal part. It's actually getting yourself accustomed to moving through it and after it and not letting it inhibit you or not letting it weigh so much on the decisions that you make or on the
Exactly.
paths that you choose, because it's natural to have it like we all do, you know.
Mm.
Exactly. This is the perfect quote right here from our mod over there in Twitch. Thank you very much, Rocket Couch. Bravery is not the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. Exactly. In
Exactly.
same thing with fear. Fearlessness
Hmm.
is not the absence of fear, it's moving through it and not letting it stop you in finding a path through. And fear can be motivating, exactly, Paula.
Mm.
Especially like way back when we needed it against like predatory animals. Fear got you running,
Didn't want to
or
be a saber toothpick.
exactly, or it got you to pick up that club and fight back. Fear motivated you to survival. Exactly.
Hmm.
And now we just have to find tools to motivate us through fear. And some of the best ones are going to come up in this book because it's actually kind of like a diagram to address what's going on in, well, Rekkr told you why he wanted to do it. He found it fascinating that these rappers and these very big power figures were using these laws, and yet, also people that wanted to do the wrong thing were using these laws. My interest in bringing the 50th law forward was because I think it's relevant to right now what's going on,
Mm.
not only in my country, but all over the world in regards to great divides, misinformation, using fear to control whole populations, um, using fear to turn others against others.
Yes.
Uh, and so for me, it hit a chord. And thank you for bringing it to me, Rekkr. I'm glad we've been talking about it. I'm glad we finally bit the bullet and decided to say, well, if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But this needs to be
Exactly.
done. This
It
needs to be
does.
done. This
I,
needs to
I,
be done.
I, I yeah, I really think it is important to do,
Hmm.
and I encourage everyone to read the book. It's like uh, even just a few random chapters here and there. The first chapter itself was fantastic.
Hmm.
Claire's
It
already
is.
read the book 4 times.
Hey, don't use me as an example. He's making fun of me all the time behind the scenes because, like, you guys know a little bit about this. Like, I take it, you give me an idea, and like I'm researching the heck out of it, up, down, sideways, left, right, over. It's like I want to know everything about it. Like that's just my nature. I'm a
Hmm.
nerd. I'm curious, and I thirst, I hunger for knowledge about anything. And this book, well, let's be honest, it tripped my trigger. It had all the elements of things I wanted to discuss and talk about. And in a different way. I'm not going to agree with everything because this book can teach you to be quite manipulative.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like if you take Stoic philosophy or street episiotomy, you can use it for bad. And people
Mm.
do. Okay, and that's not what we're advocating here. We're advocating understanding the principles, understanding the process, in some cases being able to protect yourself against it being used against you, against these techniques being used against you, because they're everywhere now
Or
more than ever.
using it, or using it for something beneficial.
Yes, to use it for yourself beneficial.
Mm.
Okay, so he talked about the fearful attitude. Okay, and he used Franklin Roosevelt as an example of how you can turn that fearful attitude around. Um, Franklin Roosevelt had to address the fact, I'm in a wheelchair. Ain't nothing I can do about that. Oh, well, I'll go out there anyway. And nothing happened. Nothing bad happened. So he just went forward. He had to address the people from a depression, trying to talk about positivity, knowing that they were going to throw tomatoes and eggs at him and not want to really listen to anything he had to say. And he went out there and gave the speech anyway, and he motivated a country because nothing bad happened. But he didn't really feel good about it at first. He didn't really think it was going to work. He believed that we had to change our mindset, but he had no idea how. So he just took a chance and he did it, and it worked. He said you have to not only talk about the positivity, but give people the small things to move through the fear and to make the small changes to build upon. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so it worked, and he got through it. Well, the next one that he talks about is the fearless type. Those people we admire, like I could never do that. Like that was brave. Where do you find the courage to do that? How could you do that? Like I could never do that. And I say to people who say that to themselves, you don't know until you're in the situation. You really
Yep.
don't. We are truly capable of incredible things when put in situations, in our survival instinct as humans is going to take over a lot. Your survival instinct might be to sit down and be quiet and let things pass. Your survival instinct might be to pick up a club and beat through it. But your individual survival instinct will definitely rear its head when confronted with a fearful situation. And it's another quote. Do you want to read this one? Can you read it with the screen or no?
Um,
Is it too
Let me
small?
see. Oh, yeah. I can read it. The very first thing I remember in my early childhood is a flame. A blue flame jumping off a gas stove somebody lit. I was 3. I was 3 years old. I felt fear, real fear, for the first time in my life, but I remember it also like some kind of adventure, some kind of weird joy, too. I guess that experience took me some place in my head I hadn't been before, to some frontier, the edge maybe of everything possible. The fear I had was almost like an invitation, a challenge to go forward into something I knew nothing about. That's where I think my personal philosophy of life started. With, with that, with that moment in my mind, I had always believed and thought since then that my motion had to be forward, away from the heat of that flame. Miles Davis.
Yep. And that's exactly, that kind of puts it right to the thing. You're going to address it if it happens. Like never think like I couldn't do it like this person or I couldn't do it like that person, because you're not going to know until you get to the situation. Because when it comes with dealing with fear, there's two ways: passive or active. Like you say, you sit down, you just let it pass, or you pick up the club and you go after it. Those are the
Exactly.
two things that Robert Greene starts to address when he talks about that. And one of the examples he uses from history is Napoleon Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that know a little bit of history, there was the battle through the Alps. Like they had to go through the Alps to do this one battle during the French Revolution. And what happened was he received. Napoleon is noted to be an information gatherer. He didn't listen to one sort about anything, and he is known as one of the great generals because he never listened to just like his main general or this, that, or everything. He got information from everywhere, and he tried to look at the big picture when doing anything. And that became very valuable, especially in war, right? You get the more
Absolutely.
information you have, the better you proceed. So
Mm-hmm.
all the information he got about this, proceeding through these Alps to do this one battle and to proceed forward was that it couldn't possibly be successful. There was no way they would make it through. There was no way around. It was a dismal mission. There was no way they could accomplish it. They were done. This is all the advice he got from his own generals and his own people. And so the reason that Green uses this as like a fearless attitude, is because of a famous quote that Bonaparte is said to have said to his people, to his men, that they're going to do it anyway because there are no Alps to his army.
Nope.
It doesn't exist. So he told them it's only his meaning, at least my interpretation, and I think what Green was meaning is if I don't make it a thing, it's not a thing. If
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm going to get through those mountains and I do my best and everybody else does, I'm going to make it. And it was just that, what they call fearlessness, that I know the situation. He didn't disregard the situation. He knew this situation and prepared the best they could with supplies and this and everything, but actually said, it's not an issue. We're going. We're doing it anyway. And they did make it through. It wasn't easy, but they did actually made it through. Oh,
And they beat the crap out of their enemy.
they did, because he actually encouraged everyone who looked up to him and he said, well, he's got all the information. And if he believes it's true, and he motivated them to believe it was true too. And once you believe a thing, would you say that that's the greatest motivator for accomplishing something? Once you have true belief in it, solid belief, like foundation for it, it can be a great motivator to move you forward in confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was people say a lot of stuff about Bonaparte, but they forget he actually was one of the best generals ever. Like he really was. You know, the 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 fearless type also they also use Malcolm X, and they're going to use Frederick Douglass a lot in the book too. Kind of leaning towards the fearless type there, just because of what they actually went through. Frederick Douglass being the abolitionist who went forward and spoke about against slavery even after he was set free, in actually motivating and putting a target on his back,
Mm-hmm.
in belief of what he was saying. And some people would consider that to be truly fearless, knowing that people are going to come, knowing that the other side is going to come at you hard and you're risking your life every time you go out there and speak. Well, that would kind of put you in the fearless category. And also in Malcolm X also, because coming through the, coming coming through the freedoms that they received and the equal rights and everything like that, Malcolm X was was Malcolm X was advocating for standing up and fighting against it still, and even harder, and fighting with loudness and violence even sometimes if necessary. And so he was taking a big chance too, because he had to be pretty fearless in it, and he was pretty aggressive about it too. But he really believed that it was not the time to sit down and just say, oh, thank you, sir, very much. He just, no, there was only the only thing for to go forward was to fight for more. And that was a big risk too. So some put him in the totally fearless category there too, as far as how he aggressed through, you know, well,
Absolutely.
you know, you know, the other thing about Roosevelt that he grew up in a wealthy, privileged family. And so he also worried about being in politics that the average person would not relate to him. But after going through the depression and trying to relate them on a level that was meaningful, and going through polio himself, showing that it doesn't matter where you come from, like adversity happens to everyone in some way. You know,
Exactly.
it.
Some more so than others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, uh,
And that's even more of a reason to accept what's happening around you.
mm-hmm. And it's funny that, like, you can take these historical figures like Bonaparte, like from the 1800s to the 1800s, and then you can come up to like Frederick Douglass, slave, born into slavery in the early 1800s, and then going through this whole thing against slavery and talking about slavery at a time when you could just get killed for it at any time. He actually created his own printing company and print, the first black owned printing company out, just doing stuff on anti-slavery and petitioning against it in the rights for every human as a human. Uh,
And if
Unheard of at the time. Yeah.
and if I remember correctly, it was quite successful.
They did. And actually, he was doing a lecture series and he felt more protected because there were other abolitionists. Like there was a whole group of them doing this. And there was a lot of wealthy white abolitionists who believed in going against slavery at the time, too. So he felt a little bit protected, but and they felt more protected and they wanted him to stay on his lecture circuit, but he decided to go into printing and get it out there in the word and start educating people and speaking more funny. He actually went against his own group of abolitionists for the lecture series to do this printing press and start on his own,
Hmm.
to branch out because he thought the message would be more powerful, and that took a lot of guts to step out of your comfort zone. Here he was speaking about something that was passionate to him and it was his life and he felt very strongly about it and he was protected in his circle of people, but they weren't, let's say, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but let's just say they weren't his people. He didn't feel he was reaching the people that he needed to reach. He didn't want to reach just wealthier white people that wanted to hear what these abolitionists wanted to say. He wanted to reach the people it actually affected, the slaves. And that's why he wanted the printing press out there so it could go everywhere, not just be a place that, let's face it, those people weren't even allowed to show up to listen to what he was saying.
Exactly.
So, it's a lot of credit. He was thinking ahead, like thinking farther than what others were saying. You know, and he went against them, which everybody was like, "What are you doing?" And he was quite young when he did it. I think he was in his 20s. Yeah.
And if you think about it, it really was a crazy idea because
Hmm.
like you're a young black man at a time when you could just disappear and no one would care.
Exactly. Pretty scary. You know,
Mm.
pretty scary. you know and I do like Robert Greene using these key figures. I think it makes it more relatable because, like Paula has said in the chat, like history is repeating itself, and it's important to go back to key figures to prove these points on how these things have happened in our past before and how we've moved forward through them, not only on an individual basis as far as the historical figure and what they did, but the climate around at the time and how society itself, the communities themselves had to move through all of this as a group, even.
Hmm.
Yeah, I find it really relevant. It could, some people may not. You might think we're being a bit boring, but I think if we don't understand the history of how we got here, we're destined to repeat it over and over and over again. We're destined not to recognize what is actually going on and to become victims of it. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like that word associated with me, at
No,
all. Yeah.
it tends to be quite a frustrating one.
Hmm. So, he went on to say that, Roosevelt and also Bonaparte, in Frederick Douglass, are classically, you know, Roosevelt could be both, but definitely the other two are classic fearless types. But then he's going to go on to talk about a new fearless type, a new fearless type of personality and way to deal with things. Okay. Do you want to read this quote or no?
I can do that.
Well, I think they want to hear your voice more too.
The
Yeah.
new fearless time. This past, the Negro's past, of rope, fire, torture, death, and humiliation, fear by day and night, fear as deep as the marrow of the bone, this past, this endless struggle to achieve and confirm a human identity, yet contains, for all its horrors, something very beautiful. People who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are.
Mhm. Now, some people would say that's like just being too specific to just one type of people, one type of community, but it's actually not. When you look at it, we faced in early 19th century all kinds of dangers and adversity, hostile physical environments, the frontier, developing our country, in different periods of time for your country and other countries, but we've all been there, right? Like you got to
Mm-hmm.
go through sharp political divisions, lawlessness and chaos before everything got, democratic and laws are put in place, and people kind of like have a societal guideline on what's acceptable or not. Um,
Spill a little bit of tea here and there.
And here we, yes, right. A little revelation here and there doesn't hurt anything, and then they respond to like, but now you can even look at like changes in technology and social mobility that's adding to it. But with all of our growing prosperity and coming through all of that, in the 20th century, one environmental remained as harsh, and they're going to say that that would be the ghettos, not only the black ghettos of inner city America, but other immigrant ghettos, the poor ghettos of America, where life is much harsher, you know. And out of these areas came frontier people like James Baldwin, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. Yes, they're all black, but they're the more prominent ones. We can think of lots of others if you do the research. Well, they became voices for dealing with this fear and oppression that is in that area that others aren't feeling and recognizing, in trying to give a voice to it and bring them forward. um in inner city America, we have the freedom to advance to the highest points of America, often what, entertainment, politics, business.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But some are saying that the advantage of conquering that fear is what's making them more prominent in these things. And that us not dealing with the fear and the pressures because we think our life is a little too easy is what's keeping us from accomplishing these great achievements, making it in entertainment, politics, in business. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I agree. I uh, I think the fear is probably something that's not something that people aren't really facing, aren't really being honest with themselves about in many ways.
Yeah, I think you're right. In what this part of the chapter is trying to push on is that adversity and challenge leads to growth in accomplishment. And I think even in the smallest way, that's an absolute true statement. You think of the things you go through when you're growing up, the moments that you remember the most when things shifted or changed for you, that you actually felt a shift in what you thought of going on in the whole world around you. Your first heartbreak, falling off your, learning to ride your bike, your first heartbreak, failing, trying to accomplish something in school and failing, and then having to go back and do it again. Um, Even in school, like things like running for school office, classroom office, and not getting it and things like that. All of these character building adversities and challenges have us addressing a fear and going forward in a decision at that time to either settle with it or just pick up, do better, and keep trying to accomplish something. And it tries to stress that we're all going through it all the time in different ways, but we all have the same thing in common, that you grow from these things. And that's why it's easy to look at people that come from the bottom and end up at the top as being some kind of magical being. But they're
It,
not. It's
yeah.
a natural progression. They are challenged more, they've got more to overcome. In just moving forward through that fear, step by step, is what leads them there. you know uh, just recognizing that they're not magical beings. That could be you. Just because
Mm.
you didn't start in the ghetto, it could still be you. you know it's mindset and attitude over adversity and challenge. Does that make sense? Like, I really think chapter 1 is all about that, actually.
Yes. And a a quote from, I believe it was a quote from the book that came to mind, that I think works quite well, is looking at your own limitations and stupidity, because
Mm-hmm.
it everyone is stupid. Literally, this is I actually say this to Claire a lot. Um, there is a there is a to me there is a massive oxymoron, because people are not only incredibly stupid but incredibly smart at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I, it's easy to forget, but like, even the smartest person in the world is stupid one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ask a nuclear physicist to build a house.
Can't do it, right?
Nope. And
Mm-hmm.
and if you actually saw him out of context, him standing in front of a house, in front of the materials to build a house going, what does this do? And a builder comes along, that's a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to think he's an absolute moron. But
Exactly.
put him into his laboratory and stuff like that, he's a genius.
Mm-hmm. It is, and Green touches on that too. Knowing yourself well enough that you know what you know, but you also know you don't know everything. Like
Mm,
accepting your limitations in your positive things, in addressing the things you want to change or not, but actually dealing in the reality of who you are. And this quote from 50, I just put it off because it was the next one. Because it's 50, I'm gonna have you read, you'll love about. You're gonna have to read it because I couldn't do it
yeah.
justice.
The greatest fear people have is that of being themselves. They want to be uh, they want to be 50 Cent or someone else. They do what everyone else does, even if it doesn't fit where and who they are, but you get nowhere that way. Your energy is weak and no one pays attention to you. You're running away from the one thing that you own, what makes you different. I lost that fear, and I once felt the power that I had by showing the world I didn't care about being like other people. I could never go back.
It's true. I mean, I would say that I couldn't say it as well as 50, but I think that people that know me, I advocate for this all the time. Like, be who you are, be
Mm-hmm.
proud of who you are. If you get it wrong, own it and do right by it. People are fallible, but it does not matter what others say about you. It's what you know about you. You know what I mean? And it's our
Exactly.
fear of, like, we all want to be liked, right? I mean, come on, it's like, we all have a little bit of tribalism in us, that way that we want to belong to a group where we're accepted and for what we believe and how we think, and like, we feel comfortable, we want that comfort. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're only dealing with that and trying to accomplish anything, you're bound to fail. Like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand yourself well enough so you could step out of this, like, group mind thing, and be able to know who you are while dealing with different situations, different groups of people in more challenging situations. Because having a foundation about yourself is going to give you the strength, and it's going to help you deal with the fear. Like, he's right. You lose the fear of being like everybody else. Like, do I fit into the norm? Am I just like the Joneses? Do I have the right car? Am I wearing the right outfit? Oh my God, I wore white pants after Memorial Day. Shoot me. Like, you know, like, when you lose all of that, just be you, you know, and and move forward. In today's climate, I think that's even more necessary, where whole groups of people are being targeted for a word or a situation. The word immigrant, the LGBTQ community, the word transgender, the word
Mm-hmm.
black, the word woman, the word single white male. Okay, like, all of it. You know what I mean? It's just, we're all being attacked by some other group at some time for some reason. But just know that that's not the only thing about you. Like, you could say the word woman, but that's not all I am. you know?
Exactly.
Sing, single white male. Is that all you are? No. Like everybody in the chat, like that's not all of who you are. And just having a good foundation of all that you are and not
Mm.
letting anybody put the label on you, you know? Never let anybody say they know you better than you know you. Lesson one. Because nobody does. Nobody does. Anybody trying to say that is manipulating you immediately. Okay.
Mm.
All right. Okay. This is a quote from the book that caused quite a conversation with Rekkr and I. And I don't want it to be. I want you guys to open your minds a little bit to hear what he's actually saying here, because Machiavelli is not really known for mincing any words, and he comes from a time that would not be acceptable now. So I'm going to read this to save all the hate mail from coming to Rekkr, like for saying this in public. I'm going to say it. Do
Damn.
you want to say it? I'll let you say it if you want to. Uh,
Okay, I'll
was I
say it.
being was I being a little too overprotective? No, go for it, because I will fight for you if anybody
Mm.
takes this the wrong way. But go ahead.
Everyone ready for the soundbite?
You ready? Everybody, get ready.
I hope you're all recording.
Yeah.
In my view, it is it is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to dominate her, you must beat her and batter her. It is clear that she will let herself be won by men who are impetuous rather than those who step cautiously.
By Niccolo
By
Machiavelli,
Nicola Machiavelli.
right? And I will say, I actually agree with this statement. Not that you should beat your women
Yeah.
or the
Now
premise.
let's not go back
Let
to
let
let's not like recess back to the 1900s here. It's
no.
not legal anymore, people.
Yes, and you know what? You shouldn't do it anyway. We don't mean beat your women, but what we are saying that, well, let's use something very simple, like okay, all right. I'm going to take a lot of flack for this, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to say I'm going to say it anyway. I know friends in types of women who actually say they want a cautious, never take chances, steady, come home every day guy, with a good income, boring. Okay. Then they get that guy and they cheat on that guy because what they want is the go getter. What they want is the one taking chances. They want to be challenged. They want things different. They want things exciting. And I don't mean to make it small like that, but what I'm trying to say is like, the one who steps cautiously doesn't always win out. Isn't there that saying, nice guys always finish last? There's a little
Mm-hmm.
kernel of truth in that. There's a little kernel in truth of that. And when they say fortune is a
You'd think
woman, it
women
needs,
would like that.
yeah, I think it's a balance of both, just like anything in life. Like, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I just think that we do really, when you look at the people that you admire, man or woman, right now, like let's just take the man woman thing out of it. Just man or woman, look at the people that you admire the most, that you think have got it all going on. They are risk takers. They've challenged the system. They went for it. They didn't sit there cautiously and invest in a Fortune 500 company and just say, and not do anything about it. They're a shark. They're aggressive. They're a lion, you know.
They
Yes.
made enemies.
Yes, they made enemies. They didn't take it cautiously. So he doesn't mean beat your women. He means address fortune like you would getting admiration from somebody. Like you need to go for it. You cannot just sit back and think fortune's going to shine on you. That's called luck. And we all know that luck comes in two versions, good and bad. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Fortune is achievable by grabbing for it. Luck isn't, right? Fortune, you can go for. You can make
Exactly.
good by your own actions. Fortune is actually determined by your actions. Luck isn't. Like luck just happens to you, right? Like who wants to live like that? Just I don't want many of us do though. It's like, we sit there in I know many in my own circle that sit there and just let life happen to them. and they're always complaining about they don't have this and they don't have that. And then if you ask them, well, what did you do to get it? And they're like, it would never work out anyway. Why bother? But of
Mm.
course, then of course you're not going to get it. You don't even have a shot at it. To me, yeah, you may not get it, but wouldn't you rather try and know that you did everything you could to accomplish it? Like instead of just sitting there and that's defeatism, sitting there saying it's never going to work out, so why bother? Well, you don't know that. Like, who are you to know that? Like, you don't know because you didn't even try. Like, I never go for that. I never go for that. Mrs. Cassandra says, "Oh, stop, Claire. It clearly says beat fortune like a woman." I'm like, okay, I know, but I don't. He might have meant it then because maybe he was beating his woman, but but no, I don't think that that's why Robert Greene and 50 Cent are using it in their book. I refuse. I refuse to give into that. Yes. Okay. All right. This is the important part here. I'm going to let you read it in your wonderful voice there. Can you see it clearly?
Okay.
All right.
Hmm. Seeing things for what they are intense. Seeing things for what they are intense realism. Wait. Seeing things for what they are
No,
intense.
see, that's where you're throwing yourself off because it's see things for what they are, period.
See things for what they're. Oh,
Okay.
intense. Realism, realism, reality can be rather harsh. Your days are numbered. It takes constant effort to carve a place for yourself in this ruthless competitive world and hold on to it. People can be treacherous. They bring endless battles into your life. Your task is to resist the temptation to wish it were all different. Instead, you must fearlessly accept these circumstances, even embrace them by focusing your attention on what's going on around you. You will gain a sharp appreciation for what makes some people advance and others fall behind. By seeing through people's manipulations, you can turn them around. The firmer your grasp on reality, the more power you will have to alter it for your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to what I was saying before. Accept what is happening.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to like what is happening. It doesn't
Or
mean
agree. Right.
or agree
Mm-hmm.
because there are situations that are ridiculous, that are stupid, that
Mm-hmm. Just acknowledge it. Acknowledge
just
it. It is what it is. Acknowledge it is what it is.
mm-hmm,
Recognize what is actually going on. That is so important. How that's something you tell me all the time, right? How
mm-hmm,
many? I bet you I can. I don't even have enough fingers to count many times in a day you say to me, "It is what it is."
yeah,
You know, and it's true. Acknowledging that and understanding what's going on around us, like you said, don't agree. You don't have to agree. You don't have to. You can accept that that is what it is. You don't have to accept that it's right or wrong. We're not talking about right or wrong. We're not talking about does it fit into my politics or not or any of that stuff. Do agree or disagree. Just acknowledge what is actually happening all around. Get a good understanding of the situation. Right.
mm-hmm.
That's because that's power right there.
and
And go
and
ahead.
I think an important part of accepting a situation or something that is happening is being open and receptive the to the situation itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, in a car crash, it's there's going to be bits and pieces everywhere. It could be people really hurt, stuff like that. Now, it's not a good thing, but you take a first responder, for instance. They come and they get to the location, they see what's happening. They can't do anything. They don't like that it's happened. but
Mm-hmm.
they accept that this is what it is, and they assess the situation, and they make the appropriate actions to solve as much as they can.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just moving through it to get what you need to get done. But you accept certain situations. There's nothing. You're not sitting there saying, "Oh my God, that person shouldn't have turned left. That shouldn't have did." You don't get focused on those small parts. You see it for what it is. This is how it happened. This is it. This is what I got to do about it. That's a good example. It is.
Mm.
In a broader sense, it would also mean not closing yourself to understanding all sides of a situation, which means not closing off conversations to the other opinions, the other agree or disagree. To understand a situation for what it is, you kind of have to see where everyone is coming from, or at least hear them. You don't have to agree, but you need to actually get the information, because maybe there'll be some points in there on why they're saying certain things about something, or anything. Doesn't have to be agree or disagree. Well, actually having the information of the whole situation is very important, because it's dealing in reality. The realism, which is chapter 1, is all about realism.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting the way it is, not that you accept that it's okay, not that you accept that it doesn't have to change, or that it's okay. You're not putting a seal of approval on it. To acknowledge. So, like, when I say accept, I don't mean go with it. I mean acknowledge it for what it is.
Mm.
Acknowledge that that's the situation. Acknowledge that's what's going on. Have a clear
And
understanding of that, right?
yeah, and especially for you Americans out there, you're currently like in a
Mm-hmm.
really weird situation where your president is a TV show host, and he's being run round by
Mm-hmm.
a a man with way too much money and far too many ideas.
Mm-hmm. And not a clear understanding of how things work that he's
Yep.
trying to change, which is offensive. Like, understand how it works before you blow it up. Like, excuse me,
Mm.
sir. But still, well, that's on the side thing. But the one
Mm.
thing that I comment, like, people will think, because 50 Cent is a rapper and he came from such a hard life, they when he's talking about the 50th law, he's talking about manipulating people to do what he wants and using these advantages. But actually, in the 50th law, he's saying the opposite. He's saying, understand that these things exist, and understand how people are using them, and recognize when they're using them to protect yourself, and that you can actually maneuver around it and still do what you need to do, so that you don't become the victim of it. Because I don't really think 50 spends a lot of time manipulating people. I think he spends a lot of time understanding what's going on, who's manipulating who's doing what, understanding all sides of a deal, so he can navigate through it. And I think that's why he's so successful, because I don't really see him using language in this book, or Green either, stating that you should manipulate people to get what you want. I see them focusing on you understanding the manipulation is out there, and seeing it for what it is, and recognizing
Mm-hmm.
it, so that you know when you're being manipulated, or a situation's being manipulated, so that you can handle it accordingly to what you need to accomplish. That's part of being a couple of steps ahead of a situation you know
Yeah.
but I wanted to say that, because some comments that I did get, like when I said I wanted to do this, were like, "Why? He's such a manipulator." And I'm like, "No, he's actually not."
The
He's
funny
actually
thing
not.
is, if you notice anything, if you know anything about 50, a lot of what he does is really just sits back and lets people talk
Hmm.
and watches what they do. A lot of it is just pure observation.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of strength in the observation, just being able to sit back, even in very emotional situations, and just observe.
Hmm. That's often hard to do, because we can be very reactionary. It's like human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we are very reactionary, and we'll give an emotional response before we actually know the whole situation or think the whole thing through. And so it takes a lot of practice and determination, and you actually have to gear yourself to the weight, to the wait till I have all the information, wait till I see it for what it clearly is, you know. That's very difficult to do in some situations. It takes a lot of practice. In 50's very, very, like you said, good at it. So are
Mm-hmm.
most people that are extremely successful, like picking their battles, gathering the
Yep.
information. Don't weigh in. Don't let anybody know what you're doing. That's a key thing right there, because information is key. The more you talk about what you're doing, the more people will use it against you. Somebody will, always. Well, that's where we come up with the hustler's eye here. Like, I'll read this one for you. This is from Richard Wright. This is life, new and strange. Strange because we fear it. New because we have kept our eyes turned from it. Men are men and life is life, and we must deal with them as they are. And if we want to change them, we must deal with them in the form in which they exist. And that means recognizing what's going on, recognizing who you're dealing with, recognizing what they're doing for what it is. Like, no sugarcoating, no walking away from it. Also, the fact that, 9 out of 10 times, you can't change what other people are doing. You can only change what you do about it, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, not wasting your time, like, you should do this, you should do that, you should have said this, no, just navigating your way through it.
Exactly.
Actually, you know what? We'll address that. Um, Why should life be feared? Only real thing to fear is the manner of your death. And some people think that since you know you're going to die, why fear it? Like, actually, I just think that societal pressures and media in general lately have just tried to put fear on all of us as a matter of control. Because if you can instill fear in people about the outcome of anything, you can control them. And
Absolutely.
when we talk about history repeating itself, this is why I'm doing this stream, because this is what I see. I
Mm.
do see that we are being overwrought with things to be afraid of constantly, things that could, may not ever happen, could never happen, or they could. But one of the things that I do fear, that I see happening in the media with all of this fear instilling and us versus them mentality speaking, whether it be, the terminology that they use in speeches or in the writing of articles to turn us against a group of people or a situation, is fear mongering. It's fear mongering for control. And when that kind of stuff starts happening, then, misinformation, not being able to tell the truth about anything, being targeted. It's kind of how democracies fall. It's how it's always happened before.
Yep.
You know, Rome, Germany, we can go on and on, all over. Every country has had its battle with it. And I think it's becoming very prominent just as an American, what I see. Um, I do believe in free speech, but when your own constitution is used against you to do harm to others, well, I have an issue. I mean, it's getting a little ridiculous, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think the 50s hustler's view of life, from having to get what he gets to dig himself out, at least with a hustler's eye and a hustler's view, you act with a code, right? A
Mm.
kind of code. And it's not like they're total chaos, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And then, so he goes on to talk about the fearless approach to things. And, you know, these are two quotes that I think you would like to put out there for them.
Reality is the fearless approach. Reality is my drug. The more I have of it, the more power I get and the higher I feel. And then keys to fearlessness. Know the know the other, know yourself, and the victory will not be at risk. Know the ground, know the natural conditions, and the victory will be total. And that once again goes back to accept what's happening.
Exactly.
Um,
It's good.
and it, a little exercise um, that I find quite helpful is actually looking at the thing that you don't like, or something that you find difficult, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to actually find a positive in it. I mean, not literally everything. There's some things that just not, but like, uh, I mean, looking at the other side of a political spectrum, and
Mm-hmm.
actually seeing, is there something about the is it is this is this side completely evil, or is this side completely irrational, or is there something to what they are saying?
Mm-hmm. It,
um
it
yeah.
used to be that was natural because like this us versus them, there's always been like in almost all countries like multiple political parties in democratic society, right? They multiple parties and there's a slight us versus them, but it's not a good versus evil, which is kind of what it's been turned into lately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know politics has always been aggressive. I'm not that naive, people, but I think you're not really looking at the situation with a long history or a good, look back if you don't see that it's gotten much more about us versus them in like you either agree with me 100% or you're out because
Absolutely.
there's threats, there's violence, there's like retaliation, recourse like being done right under our noses, like there's an absolute disregard for law and order,
Mm.
to say like I'm above it, like I'll do what I want because I have the right opinion, and it's
Yeah,
just all crumbling and down around us. Like if we allow that and we accept that, but I understand people just don't know what to do about it. They don't know what to do about it. What do you do?
exactly.
Yeah.
And a big issue is that we're not allowed to say we're something, and uh uh have opinions that don't fit perfectly within that box. There's become a huge purity test in a way,
Mm-hmm.
where, like, if you say you're this, then you are exactly A, B, C, D, E, F. You can't have a Q or a S in there, because that's not about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have to have, you, like, you say you're something, and there's a whole lot that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just not how people work. And the thing that I find quite interesting is that people do talk about, like, the gray area,
Mm-hmm.
and the gray area of things, and how nuanced some stuff can be. And they're the same people that often will straight up label you
Mm-hmm.
as just fitting within this box if you have a particular standpoint.
Especially if it's their agenda. Because they don't want people to hear, the other sides of anything, if they're trying to make your point. Like Liam says, someone can be rational and still be wrong. That's true.
Hmm.
You listen to them. You don't have to say whether they're right or wrong. You don't have to push back against it. And it also the comment from Jin that he said the hustler's eye. He always thought that was about the tells everyone has. It is because
Mm.
it's looking to see what's going on around you. So yes, in a way, yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, the rest of the chapter kind of expands upon exercises that we all can do to practice getting over the fear of moving forward and dealing with situations that are difficult, cumbersome, challenging, adversity, and sometimes in cases where we feel it's hopeless, you know? Well, I just bulleted them here. If you're following along with the PDF, there's short descriptions on what he's actually talking about, but we can only put it in layman terms to how we interpreted it, right, Rekkr? Like the
Exactly.
rediscovered curiosity and openness. Exactly what you were talking about. Exploring the other side, exploring things we don't know about, because you can't really make judgments. You can't protect yourself or go with it, benefit from it, or avoid it if you don't know about it, right?
Exactly. And you are guaranteed to even make the same mistakes that what you're seeing, that what you consider a mistake is happening. You might
Mm-hmm.
just do it in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yep, exactly. Know the complete terrain and expansion. Get out of your bubble. It's real comfortable to only surround yourself with people who think and feel the way that you do. Like the same cheese, go to the same restaurants, watch the same movies. But you're limiting yourself from experiencing things that could benefit goals and things that you want for yourself when you do that.
Hmm.
And it's just a matter of being, expand it a little bit, take a risk, a little bit of a challenge, learn more, expand what you're looking at, where you're looking, how you're looking, you know. At least that's what I took from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even challenging yourself, like straight up, talk talk to someone who has a I try not to go to politics, but it's really easy just to use it as an example. But like, if you're someone who's liberal, talk
Mm-hmm,
to someone who's talk to someone who is a conservative, and actually do it in earnest. Like approach
mm-hmm,
it where you're just listening to what they're saying, and even try and find, not so much just listening to what they're saying, but try and figure out the rationale for them to reach the opinion that they have. Because
exactly.
everyone can justify what they're thinking to an extent.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel that. I do. I definitely do. In, I like that comment. We're just woke liberals now. It's like,
Mm.
you know what? I'd have to say that, like 3 years ago, when I first started talking with Rekkr, one of the most interesting things he said to me, and it really kind of turned my world upside down, is because I've always been known to have a lot of opinions. Don't go crazy in chat. Yeah, I know I talk too much, but when I have something to say, I say it, and I try to think my opinions out. But I said to him, and I won't mention the name, but I said to him I wouldn't listen to a certain commentator because, I really had strong opinions. And he said, why? What do you know that they actually ever said, or what opinion that they actually have that you're against? And I'm like, well, humana, humana, huma. I didn't know. I didn't. And so I had to go watch that commentator, and I had to learn that I actually agreed with some of their stuff sometimes, not all the time. Okay. But I had to agree that they did make some valid points about certain things, and that I had misjudged them based on what other people said about what they were saying. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So I had to swallow crow on that one. Remember that? That was one of the times you
Yeah.
were actually right. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I think you marked it on a calendar over there. Rekkr humbled the bear on this day. you know, but it was, and I took it as a valuable lesson. And from that day forward, don't we both like actually dig out from both sides all the time, showing each other stuff like from both sides of
Absolutely.
the situation to keep each other balanced in these conversations, and we have some
Mm-hmm.
of the best conversations because of it. Because when we're not, I opened up my circle. I didn't put other things off limits, because just hearing it is not going to turn me. Just listening to it, or actually taking the time to understand what somebody else says doesn't mean I totally agree with them. It doesn't make me their supporter, their comrade, or anything. It's just me listening, and gathering information. Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah.
It's I I think a lot of the idea of looking at something or someone that you disagree with, it sort of falls back. It sort of is very reminiscent to the old Adam and Eve story and
Hmm.
the apple of knowledge. Let's be honest. It was good to eat that apple.
It was. Just
If
the fruit. Yeah.
yeah, in the story,
But
it was
it opened
important
up
to
their
have eaten
world,
that apple.
didn't it? Yeah, they had just the two of them in a little garden, and all of a sudden, like, there's a whole big world of
Mm-hmm.
everything. Mm. No, I totally agree. No, but we're gonna move on because I know it's getting like we're going to finish up within the next
Oh
like
yeah,
15
yeah.
to 20 because we're already going longer. This will be the longest one. We're gonna hope to keep the others to an hour long as we go through each
Mm.
chapter. But the third option is dig to the roots in depth. This is know your history, people. Know the facts of a situation. Go back into history, like everything. Like dig to the roots. Get down to the whole situation and know your history. Absolutely. I definitely stand by that one because you can't know how you got here unless you know where you've been.
Exactly.
Okay. And that goes for situations too. You don't know why it's like this unless you go to how it started, how it got there, what are all the contributing factors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one can be harder. See further ahead, proportion in.
That one I think is very situational because you have to be very careful when you're looking ahead because there is the tendency the the tendency to catastrophize what you're seeing ahead because we're so adept at looking
Mhm,
at identifying negatives.
mhm.
Um, so always, at least I think it should always be looking further ahead with a grain of salt.
True. Like, don't put too much on it. And I think that's how I took it. When they said see further ahead in proportion, they mean when you're dealing with the situation at the point when you're checking out a certain situation or dealing with something, an adverse situation, maybe somebody arguing with you about something or, challenging you about something, you look a little bit further ahead and you proportion your response based on the goals for the head. So, in other words, being too reactionary and like taking their head off with a bat, like I am very commonly will do, you may regret that when you are cutting off the conversation, and it actually will be detrimental. And you find out more information later that would have changed how you reacted or your response. It does prevent a lot of backpedaling, and not making it like this is the worst thing ever in that situation, because I can guarantee you, like, as soon as you think it's the worst thing that could ever happen, the universe will do everything it can to prove to you it's not. It's something even worse will happen. Like after
Yep.
that. So proportionate in response, proportionate in the weight that you give the situation for progressing it forward. Like Rekkr said, proportionalizing what's going on, not to be the worst case scenario ahead. Like keep it back a little bit and deal with it as really what's going on like right now, and try not to make it a bigger issue like into the future, like projecting it for
Mm.
like automatically assuming if A happens, B is going to happen. Be prepared
Yeah.
for B, but don't assume B. Does that make sense? Like A happened, so I think B is going to happen. Be prepared for it, but don't assume that it's going to happen, because if you assume that that's going to happen, you're going to overreact. You're going to base on something that
You
may or may not happen. Hmm?
you're just going to get yourself stuck and you're not going to
Stuff,
do anything
right? You
because
won't be open,
if
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
if you catastrophize all the time about stuff, well, everything can be a catastrophe. You could literally be sitting there and a meteorite comes and slams into you
Mhm.
from 1 billion miles away. That's 100% a possibility.
Mhm.
Should you be worrying about it? Should you be preparing for it? I guess if you're prone to getting hit by asteroids, then probably. But other than that, no. You
Mhm.
should you should accept that this is a possibility and just keep going
Yep. Exactly.
and
Liam
take
said.
it in proportion like that is a tiny possibility, very
Mhm.
tiny.
Mhm. Liam said, or make assumptions about what someone else is likely to do too far in the future. Really, because you really don't know what someone else is actually. You can only know what you're going to do, but it's really
Never,
hard. Yeah, never
yeah,
assuming
never
is always the
assume
best
what
thing.
anyone
Yeah,
is going to do.
yeah. Take
Never
yeah,
make expectations on what someone is going to do.
right. Basically, it's advocating for taking all the information in and making probabilities, but you can't call those facts. Like, absolutely don't call them facts, you know. And Liam, I agree with you when it talks about listening to the other side and all that could be considered charitable listening. And everyone has to actually make their decision on when a conversation is valid and when it's not. I'm not saying listen to everybody even when they're boring your head off and they don't have any constructive thing to add, but at least recognize that situation, acknowledge it for what it is, and deal with the reality of it. Is that no, you don't want to hear what that person has. That's the reality of it because you feel they don't have anything to contribute. That's fine. Like, I don't think you should actually put yourself into situations that are compromising for you. And sometimes charitable listening can lead to that, you know. And I know that there's two sides to that coin. Some people are against charitable listening and some people are for. I, as long as it's not causing me any harm or detriment, and then, you know, I think I'm for listening of any level, you know,
Mm,
charitable, you know, because there might be something in there. But I do get where you can get into these conversations that are just not worth it because they just go round and round and nothing's ever going to change and there's no point to be made and they're not giving you any information. Like, call it, like, see it for what it is
mm,
and call it. You know, just and just call it out, you know. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
A-
because
And that's
I
why
get
it's
yeah.
important to understand like different aspects of conversation,
Mhm.
whether someone is using circular logic or stuff like that.
Mhm. And this is what's important too when we come to this next one. Look at people's deeds, not their words, for sharpness. This is something that's really important. Yes, listen to what they're saying and everything like that, but then look what they do. And when those things
Actions
don't
speak
match
louder
up,
than words.
the actions is really the purpose of their intent and everything. The words, like, that's just what they want you to think. And at least that's how I look at it. The words are what they want you to think. The actions are actually what they're doing and what they actually represent and what they actually, you know, are moving forward to.
Mm,
So it's really important to separate those two and put them in the right category because that 50 Cent in both Robert Greene lead to that is the difference right there between knowing what's actually going on and not being manipulated into believing it's
exactly.
something else, not being hoodwinked, not being manipulated or fear mongered into seeing everything. It's the difference between reading an article that says that, like, the world is coming to an end tomorrow. And then you get to the bottom of the article, it says, and that's what it said in this movie I watched last night.
Mm.
Okay. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Like,
well,
yeah.
I love those reviews of products that they talk this like absolute like they're trying to say that it's this absolutely terrible thing, and then they flip it around at the end and it says, "Oh, but the movie was great."
Exactly. Yeah, worst thing ever, but I'd watch it again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Mm,
so you see what they did. They really just, the whole purpose of that is they just hook you. They just want to get you in there. They just really don't care about giving any valued opinion. It's all about just, you know, getting the article read and getting the
mm.
numbers, you know. But and the other thing, the last one was reassess yourself, detachment. In other words, take the time to pull back from situations to understand how where you're at with stuff. Know yourself really well. Know
Look
yourself
at
really well.
yourself like you were a stranger, like you were trying to
Hmm.
get to know a stranger. I think is a good way of putting it.
Hmm.
Um, making ask yourself questions as if you're trying to get to know yourself from an
Hmm.
ignorant point of view. Um, so, like, do you really feel this way about something? S- Questions like that.
And it's okay to change too. That's why you
Mm-hmm.
reassess yourself. Like, I get new information all the time. I feel different about things. I explore things, and I'm willing to admit when my opinions about things change. I become softer or harder on certain issues, or change the angle that I'll attack a conversation on something. Um, because we're growing and changing all the time. We're responding to our environment and the information. If you are actually moving through this fearlessly, that you are gathering information constantly, you are open to new situations and changes, you are actually learning about others and watching what's going on around you all the time. You have to reassess yourself because you're going to be changing through that process the whole time. Every bit of
Yes,
it is going to be
it's
changing. Yep.
it's about seeing how it is, no matter how ugly
Right.
how no matter how ugly it is.
Hmm. That comes back to, you don't have to agree, you don't have to accept, you have to acknowledge it is what it is, a
Mm-hmm.
situation. Absolutely. Okay. Huh. All right, I'm gonna read these because this is where he starts to concentrate, and like we've got 20 minutes and I want to get to the relevancy at the end. But one of the main part of chapter 1 is about realism in realist. And so his actual explanation here is this comes right from the book. Okay. The reversal of perspective. The word realist often comes with some negative connotations. Realists, according to conventional wisdom, can be practical to a fault. They often lack a feel for the finer, higher things in life. Taken too far, such as types can be cynical, manipulative, or Machiavellian. They stand in contrast to dreamers and people of high imagination who inspire us with their ideas or divert us with their fantastical creations. This is a concept that comes from looking at the world through the lens of fear. It is time we reverse this perspective and see dreamers and realists in their true light. The dreamers, those who misread the actual state of affairs and act upon their emotions, are often the source of the greatest mistakes in history. The wars that are not thought out, the disasters that are not foreseen. Realists, on the other hand, are the real inventors and innovators. They are the men and women of imagination, but their imagination is in close contact with the environment, with reality. They are empirical scientists, writers with a sharp understanding of human nature, or leaders who guide us thoughtfully through crises. They are strong enough to see the world as it is, including their own personal inadequacies. You know, and so I don't think it's wrong to dream and to think of a better world and to advocate for it. I say this often. I have rose colored glasses on often because I want to see the world the way I want it to be. And I move through life pushing for that. But at the same time, you'll notice my avatar pushes those glasses down all the time to see what is actually going on. I may want it a different way. I may wish and hope that it was a different way, but I know how it actually is. And I have to accept that that is how it is right now, you know? And so they're not saying don't dream. They're saying put those dreams in reality.
To put it in a cruder sense, you can't just imagine a plate full of dog poo as fragua.
Because it smells. Oh,
You
God.
have
I'm sorry.
you have to look at it and realize it is for what it is.
Can I say it? Can I say
Do
it?
it.
A plate of shit is a plate of shit. I don't care what you call
Exactly.
it. Just if it's a plate of shit, it's a plate of shit. Period. And you can call it whatever you want, but that's what it is. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't do me any good to say, oh, I'll just give it a fancier name and dream it's something else. It's gonna smell, it's gonna taste, it's gonna be shit. Period. And you gotta recognize the reality of situations. Before you can do anything about it, you have to know what's going on, right? Could we at least
Mm-hmm.
agree on that? Like, okay. All right. So then he says, let us take this further. The real poetry and beauty in life comes from an intense relationship with reality in all aspects. Realism is, in fact, the idea we must aspire to, the highest point of human rationality. And this comes from James Baldwin. People who cling to their delusions find it difficult, if not impossible, to learn anything worth learning. A people under the necessity of creating themselves must examine everything and soak up learning the way the roots of a tree soak up water. In other words, don't be blind to the situation, learn everything you can, and just don't think you know. The worst thing anybody can do is think they know it all, like just to think they actually know,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Ah. Now, this is the part where I make Rekkr's head explode. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. Connecting Green's realism to modern America. Now, I said modern America because that's how I related to it. And I'll have to admit that I wrote these next slides. This is me. Okay. And then I kind of dragged Rekkr into this part of it because this is how I connect to this subject. Rekkr came from it, is an aspiring story and wanting to know more about how this works in actually getting ahead in life. And I'm like, damn, but doesn't this actually what's going on right now? And how can we make this statement empowering for people so that they can see and feel empowered and learn a little bit more in addressing certain things and understanding why they feel uncomfortable about what they see going on all around it. Because this is how I am relating to what's going on. Um, Connecting green to realism. The first part is disillusionment in misinformation. In today's climate, marked by political polarization, media distrust, and social upheaval, many people are either overwhelmed by information or retreat into echo chambers that confirm their biases. Green would call this the opposite of realism. He argues that power begins with seeing things as they are, not as we wish they were. When citizens or leaders deny reality, whether it's climate change, systemic inequality, economic disparity, or the fragility of democratic norms, they become vulnerable to manipulation, fear, and stagnation. Green's realisms urge us to, and this I took right from the book, cut through the noise. You don't listen to just because they're shouting at the loudest, doesn't make it true.
Just
Seek
because
truth.
there's someone in that restaurant eating the dog poo and telling you it's good doesn't
Doesn't mean
mean
it is.
that it's going to be good.
Exactly. Seek the truth, not comfort. Yes, it's great to have other people agree with us and just be comfortable and, just like not have to go outside the norms. But we have the risk of not dealing with the reality of the situation when that's the only place we are. I'm all for you staying there, but venture out a little bit and know what's going on. Like you can have both. Like you can do both. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Seek the truth, not comfort. Stay alert to power plays happening behind emotional narratives. The world's coming to an end. No,
And
it's
that
not.
is actually a very big thing at the moment, where people are using very emotionally charged language to try and
Mm-hmm. The media,
manipulate people
politicians, you name
into
it. Mm-hmm.
listening to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Fear mongering, basically. Fear
Mm.
mongering for control. Absolutely. It is what is going on. The second part, fear is a political tool. If you're an American, you know what I'm talking about right now. Yes, you do. No matter what side you're on, left, right, Dem, Republican, it's not about that. In chapter one, Green shows how fear is used to control behavior in the streets, in the corporate world, and in society. This maps perfectly onto modern politics, where fear is often weaponized. Fear of immigrants, crime, or economic collapse. Fear of the other side winning. Fear of losing one identity or values. If we let them have this, you won't get that. Oh, it's the Dems. They did it. Oh no, those Republicans, they can't win. No, that would be wrong. Or like fear of immigrants. Like all immigrants? Really? Is immigrant a bad word? This is America. We're all immigrants. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fear of crime? Yes, if you don't listen to me and pass this law, then crime's gonna go up and somebody's gonna kill your grandmother or kidnap your child. Economic collapse. It's happening. Okay, the widening of the gap between the lowest and the top, the widening, and there's not that many in the middle anymore. Realism in
No.
Green's framework is about recognizing when fear is being used as a tool and refusing to let it control your choices. It empowers citizens to respond with strategy, not emotion. Realists see the machinery behind the message and act accordingly. Recognize it for what it is, trying to be controlled. Look for the real message. Look for what they're really doing, not what they're saying. Look for what they're actually doing and not what they say they're doing. This one was big because yesterday in America and all over the world, there were protests again that were anti-Trump and Elon Musk. Not so much the person, but a movement against doing things that you want to accomplish stuff, but disregarding all law in order to do it. I do believe that was the mission of the actual protests, to just let it now know that we see what's going on, because they weren't violent and they weren't even strategically planned to address one issue or another. They were just against how things are being done right now. Movements like organized protests, labor strikes, or even populist political surges from both the right and the left can be seen as a form of collective realism, a refusal to pretend that things are okay. There were so many people out there going, I see what's going on and it's not okay. That's what that message was. We don't like what's going on. It's not okay. We see what's happening. These groups are confronting the reality of injustice, inequality, or alienation and taking power into their own hands. Did they accomplish the change of laws or make it go away? No. But what they were is seen, and made to know that it's not okay, that people are starting to recognize what's going on. So I applaud it. Some people say to me, hey, what did it actually do? It doesn't have to do anything. It was a movement to say there is a lot of people to see what's going on. Eyes are on you. We're not happy about this. Nobody thinks that you could pick up a protest sign and make a new law the very next day. That's not how things work. But it
Nope.
was a start. It was a very
Mm,
good start, a hopeful start. Okay.
it was.
So, right from the book, Green would say, the moments people stop fearing conflict or backlash and begin embracing reality, they step into power. It was a powerful movement because before that, we heard a lot of rhetoric about if you're against me, we're going to jail you. There was actually executive orders put against actual lawyers who were actually fighting against the administration for doing things the wrong way. And there were threats that we're just going to shut down your businesses, take your law licenses, and put you in Gitmo. I did a stream with Christopher Mate the other day, and we had some very unpopular thoughts about the administration. And the first thing I said is, we could be in Gitmo tomorrow based on what I just heard, because you weren't
Mm,
allowed to have an opposing opinion. All over Twitter, Elon in all over the socials, Trump were saying, if you're against us, you're wrong. We're going to come at you. We will use law and order to silence you. And I'm like, really? In America? Wow. It doesn't sound like America, does it? Yes.
nope.
No. You know, fearlessness in this content isn't just individual, it becomes cultural and political. It sparks change. And I think that we are coming into a change in America like that. We're coming into, when we did the march, when we did the marches for equality for Black people, when Malcolm spoke up, and we did all that. Many when JFK, things like that, way back. Okay, we're talking about, when women got the right to vote. We're talking about real big changes here. The protests against the Vietnam War, against having a choice about this kind of stuff. It does feel like that to me, in a way. Not that it should be violent or go against everything they're saying, but just asking them to do it the right way, you know, and not disregard law and order. So the
Exactly.
last part, yeah. Leaders in realism or lack of it. Okay, I got a little bit of snarky here, so I apologize, people, in advance, but sorry, not sorry. Today's most effective leaders, whether you agree with them or not, often share one trait. They understand the landscape exactly as it is. They know what motivates people, how systems really work, and how to leverage perception. Leaders who ignore reality or try to maintain the illusion of control through denial often collapse under pressure. Green would call this a failure of realism, and it's often fatal in politics, and we have seen it happen. The manipulation of perception has been very strong in politics over the last 20 years. The collapse of a strong Democratic Party to keep law and order has been evident. Many would say the Democrats have had their head in the sand, not knowing the climate out here, not knowing how things really were and how people really felt about what was going on. And all of that was used. All of that was
Hmm.
used as an agenda to get what they want. And that's how it goes. Why does it matter? You know, in certain times, the 50th law reminds us that the path to clarity and strength is through realism, not away from it. Understand what's going on. See it for what it really is. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to accept it, but you have to acknowledge it that it is what it is. Those that do that in politics, in life, in business, in everything, get farther. They can accomplish their goals and agendas, their endeavors. For the individual, see the world as it is, drop the fear, and move with confidence. For the collective, which the group, recognize when fear is being used to divide and confront the truth, even when it's ugly. And that's what's going on now. For leaders, power comes from understanding reality deeply and moving strategically, not emotionally. And that that was the last of it. Whether you agree with me or not, that's where it is. That's where it is for me on that one. I don't know. Um, I think that's why it relates to us now with what's going on. I think in more than just
Mm,
my country here in America. I think it's been going on in many countries, you know.
I agree. I think there has been a shift in what people are now willing to say,
Hmm.
uh, which is both good and has some drawbacks too.
Mm. Yep. And I think that that's a good place to leave it, don't you? As we did
Yes.
go 2 hours, much longer than we thought, to
Mm,
get through everything. They will be shorter from now on because we're going to do one chapter at a time. But
yep.
I like what Liam said here. Every revolution started when one person said no more and someone else agreed. And there they went. Like just agreeing that something wasn't right and actually moving forward. But recognizing what's going on around them. Yeah, to be able to
Exactly.
see it. Well, well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. What do you think, Rec? Did you accomplish what you thought in the
I
first?
was I quite enjoyed it. I think we did well.
Well, I'm impressed that we got through the introduction in chapter one, like within
Yes.
the 2 hours. Like that was impressive
Mm,
because it was a lot to cover. There'll be
yeah.
it'll be more compartmentalized going forward, everyone. I
Mm,
do hope that you will take that PDF and like go over what we were talking about. I don't want to read the book word for word. Absolutely. We want to talk about the concepts that he puts out there and try to correlate them to what's going on now and so that you all can, relate to it somewhere personally in your lives, because I think it's actually informative. I really
mm,
did. I was quite impressed with it. Instead of it just being a philosophical way of looking at things and just, a rapper's point of view, which
mm,
it could easily, you could judge the cover by that, based on who wrote the book, but it wasn't. I could actually relate to a lot of it,
mm.
so hoping others would. I'm open to questions, and I'm sure Rekkr is too. If you guys have anything you want to add later, please
Yep.
hit the back of the comment section. Let us know. But, you're not going to stop us from coming back next week, though, because we're going to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to do this. We hope you'll join us. But what do you say? You got any last words, Rek? I'll be quiet.
Uh, just remember, it's shit on the plate. It's not foie
Yes.
gras.
If it smells like shit, looks like shit, and probably tastes like shit, like go ahead and acknowledge it's shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No,
And don't
actually,
listen to the people that are eating it.
yes, exactly. 'Cause some people will try to convince you that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Do those YouTubey things. I know I forgot the banner, but do it anyway. I think we're going to call it then. We're going to call it a night and let Rekkr get back to his university studies. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. I'll see you guys that want to join me tomorrow afternoon for the Lori Vallow opening statements in her trial. And then tomorrow evening, we'll be doing Luigi Mangione and Rex Harriman at around 8 o'clock for a true crime breakdown. There's a lot going on in these cases. But thank you. And we'll be back next weekend, right? On Saturday, though, right?
Yes.
Not Sunday. We're going to
Yes.
try for
It'll
Saturdays.
be Saturday.
Yeah. And
Hopefully, if my internet doesn't go on strike again.
yeah. And hopefully we'll try to pick a reasonable time, not too late for everybody, and we'll see. We'll work with Ricker's university schedule, but we'll be back. But thank you, Rekkr. This is fun. I
Mm,
enjoyed it. I hope you did. Well,
I enjoyed it. I did. Thoroughly.
thanks everybody in chat, and thanks for all of you who are going to watch later. And like I said, we're open to questions. Just hit the back of that comment. It's good, pro or con, good or bad. We want to hear it all. You know. Hey. Oh, Liam said if it's foie gras, it's already shit.
Yeah, well, I mean,
He's not into the pate. Okay.
then I'm still not wrong.
Still not wrong. He's like, yeah, it's just a different variety.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. On that, we're going to hit the flying book and we're out of here. Everybody have a good night. Thank you so much. And thanks, Rekkr. This was really enjoyable.
Thank you.